Brought to you by Dale Carnegie of Orange County, this is the 411 on Leadership podcast, where we discuss common sense leadership practices with executives in Southern California to transform you into the leader people want to follow.
Well, good Monday morning and welcome back to the 411 on Leadership. I'm John Campbell, and not on my right today, but remotely, as you can see, is Mr. Steve Thomas. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, good morning, John. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this podcast as we're talking about inclusive leadership and being good decision makers as it relates to not just our organization, but also as it relates to our people as well. And so got to give a quick shout out to Sitch Radio. If you are looking to, as another venue to share your story, or even more importantly, share the stories of others, a podcast is a great way to do that. And with that being said, we want you to hit up our man, Brian, who's running Sitch Radio. So if you're looking at doing your own podcast, visit sitchradio.com. And Brian is more than happy to help you share your story as well as enable you to share the stories of others. So, John, who do we have in the studio today? Obviously, it's not me, but I'm still here, and it's great to be with you.
Yeah, I swapped you out. I got a new and improved partner with me today. So, yeah, we are excited getting to talk about, as Steve mentioned, decision-making and how important that is to leadership and inclusivity. How do we help our teams? And joining me today and all of us here at the 411 on Leadership is Ken DuBose. He's a longtime resident of Orange County, and he's a seminary graduate, a business owner, and as I've learned, and we're going to talk about a little bit, because I'm going to have to ask, he's been a longtime Taekwondo instructor. We'll get to that in a minute. But Ken, he's the co-founder and senior vice president of Business Group Resources, which over the last 4 years has helped over 1,500 companies get back more than $120 million in benefits from the research and development. I had to stumble on that. I didn't say it wrong. I didn't add any extra zeros.
No.
$120 million in research tax credits. Well, I'll have you help me with that here in a second too. He's often says that he has the best job in the world because he gets to work with great business owners, helping them to learn about a program that they had no idea even existed and help them financially. Help us welcome this morning, Ken DuBose.
Well, thank you so much. And John and Steve, thank you for having me today. It's just a real privilege and an honor to be here.
Yeah, well, glad to have you. So talk to us a couple of those things. Taekwondo. So what got you into Taekwondo? How long have you been doing it?
Well, I knew I was going to get older. I just didn't want to get older and fatter. So about 40 years ago, I started, taking Taekwondo. I'd been an athlete most of my life, and just something that I've continued and I've enjoyed, and it's been a journey.
Now, as we're talking leadership, and one of the things that you'd mentioned to me also is that you've also instructed it.
I have, yeah.
How is that? Have you been able to incorporate leadership principles from Taekwondo also into business and to life and carrying on?
Absolutely. It's just given me the ability to work with people and to help them learn how to develop. And Taekwondo allows you, as an instructor, to see the fruits of growth. Whereas sometimes when you're working with people in life, you may plant something into their life and you may not be around to see that develop 20 years later. But here you can see immediate growth and people gaining skills, doing things they thought they could never do. And so absolutely.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. And I'm going to have Steve's going to jump in and get us going here in a second on the decision-making aspect of leadership. Right. But I got to ask about Business Group Resources.
Yeah.
$120 million. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, I would say probably the majority of your listeners, business owners, probably are not even aware of the program. The Research and Development Tax Credit started in 1981 during the Ronald Reagan administration. The government spends billions each year funding that program. It was developed to help businesses that are creative in nature, that have employees, that pay taxes, the ability to be able to keep more of their money, get some of their money back that they paid in previous year's taxes, pay less taxes in the future. And for many, many companies, For example, we helped a commercial plumbing contractor in Central Orange County get back $152,000. Had no idea they were qualified for that, and made a big difference. Company, 12 employees. So there's just a lot of money out there, and a lot of companies will benefit if they just know about it.
Big companies, small companies, does it matter?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, good. You're the kind of friend business owners want to have.
Well, I think so. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hey, Ken, thanks again for joining us on this podcast. What would you say as it relates to you've encountered a lot of success as it relates to when you're leading people? What would you say is that one or two important leadership lesson that you've learned that has helped you to even continue to be successful, especially this last year and a half?
Well, I appreciate you saying, Steve, that we've had some success, and we're very grateful for that. But we've also had failure. And I think that, since we're talking about the decision-making process today, I think we just need to understand that we're going to make mistakes. And one of the things that I've learned about that is that, when my kids were young and they were growing up, I would always tell them, guys, if you're going to make a mistake, try to make it on the side of good judgment. And what I mean by that is that sometimes in a company, when you're leading a company and maybe an opportunity comes across your desk that could take your company to the next level. But maybe it's outside of your realm of experience, or maybe you have no experience in it. What I'm going to say, if we're going to make mistakes, we want to make sure that we could have made a ton of really good decisions, but we want to make sure that we don't make one mistake that is so big that it becomes fatal. And so what we've learned over time is we're going to make mistakes, but I think there's two principles about making mistakes. Number one, be willing to be humble and say you're sorry.
Wow.
One of my business mentors used to say that the older I get, the more I mature, the more I help grow my company, the more I find I'm having to say I'm sorry. And within our company, to some of our employees, I've been willing to go and say, you know what, that was kind of boneheaded. I made a mistake. I'm really, really sorry. I'll do my best to make it right. And I think sometimes business leaders are afraid to say that because they think it's going to make me look weak. That's just not true. It's going to make you look real. It's going to make you look trustworthy. Because when you're willing to say, I made a mistake, I'm going to do my best to make it right, that engenders trust in people. So that's number one. But secondly, if you're going to make mistakes, make them incrementally. And here's what I mean by that. As I told my kids, make it on the side of good judgment. So sometimes with my business partner and myself, we'll have something come across our desk and we'll look at it and go, well, this is a little bit outside of our experience, but it could be good. But we're not going to push all of our chips on the table on that idea and bankrupt our company. What we'll do is we'll incrementally beta test it, so that two things can happen. Number one is I can learn where the trap doors are. So I can learn where we're going to maybe have a mistake, so we can avoid those when we start scaling that idea up. And then also I can learn where the opportunities are, and I can learn those because I know we're going to make mistakes along the way. If you do incremental decision making, incremental mistakes along the way, then you can learn the lesson, see the opportunities, but not kill your company in the process.
Yeah, no, that's so good, Ken, and it actually ties into a theme a little bit that we have been discovering in our journey as we're talking about inclusive leadership, and more specifically, that theme relates to that of being authentic, to being open, being putting ourselves as trustworthy. Last podcast, we talked a little bit about that with Dave as it relates to allowing our people to know us. And then allowing our people to know us, it creates that air of trustworthiness. It creates that psychological safety that does allow for when mistakes do happen, that we're not killing our team, because of the mistakes, as long as it's not the critical one, but at the same time, just allowing that safety and being transparent. Go right ahead. I believe you were going to follow up with something, Ken.
Well, I think beyond making mistakes, I think the number one thing you need to really think about when you're making decisions is that you make those decisions that come out of a place of integrity. I think that sometimes companies mistakenly think that if I shave a little off here, a little fib there, a little less quality, here, that I can improve the bottom line. And it's really dumb when you think about it, because people are not stupid. You will be found out.
Yeah.
I heard a guy once say that I can't hear what you're saying because what you are is speaking way too loudly. And I think it's really important that we learn not to, I always tell people, look, don't shortcut the shortcut. Sometimes people think I can take a shortcut to success, and that's usually the quickest way to failure. Here's the shortcut. Do it right. Do a right thing. Do it in a right way. Do it that way the first time you do it, and do it that way every single time you do it. And if you come out of a place of integrity, there was a very successful guy, one of the co-founders of Amway, Rich DuBose used to say that, I would rather have to explain price once than poor quality forever. And I think it's such a true statement. Come out of a place of integrity. Do a right thing in a right way the first time you do it, every time you do it.
How would you balance that, Ken? And I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. And if you're listening with us today, we're talking with Ken DuBose, the co-founder and senior vice president. Did I get it right?
You did.
Okay. Of the Business Group Resources. And he's talking to us today about being a decision maker and what does that look like as a leader. And make sure if you're listening with us today that you subscribe, you add your comments, because you're part of the conversation. If you've got questions for Ken, make sure you leave them here. And even if you're watching this or listening to it later, you can add those comments and we'll go back and we'll have a dialogue with you. But Ken, there's a challenge sometimes with us as leaders, as you mentioned a couple of things. One of those is admitting a mistake.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't want to, because we're the boss. We can't look like we've got kinks in our armor.
Right.
Like, how do you balance that with trying to say, well, no, I'm the boss, I'm the decision maker, I'm the one, the buck stops with me.
Right.
But yet be vulnerable in that sense, because there's some vulnerability in admitting when you blew it.
Well, you will blow it.
Okay.
It's just unavoidable.
All right.
You're human, right? It's just part of the human condition. But, I'll give you an example. We have one of our senior vice presidents, my business partner and I practiced this concept of that you might be aware of. It's called ready, fire, aim.
Okay.
You ever done that?
Yes.
Yeah. Where you get it out there, the bullet's out of the gun, and it's a little too late to aim at that point, right? So we came up with what we thought was a great idea, and we just, we were so excited about it, we just pushed it out there. And it turned out it wasn't such a great idea. And the core was a good idea,
sure,
but the implementation affected our senior management, our senior leadership. And so one of our senior vice presidents, who a bit older than I am, came back and says, Ken, just as a suggestion, next time, he said, it's not a bad idea, but next time, why don't you maybe roll it out to us first, let us play with it, and we'll come back and give you some feedback. If I had the idea that it's about me and, I'm the boss, then it could be a problem, right?
Right.
But the reality is I'm not the only guy in the world who's got a good idea, right? My business partner and I have been business partners 25 years.
Wow.
Many marriages just don't last that long.
Right. Yeah.
And you may not believe this, but the truth is, while we've had disagreements, we've never had a fight in 25 years.
Wow.
And the reason why is because for Ron and I, it's not about us. We don't care who's right. What we care about is what's right.
Okay.
What's going to work? What's going to move our company forward? What's going to move the ball down the field? What's going to do what's best for our clients? What's going to make everybody money in the process? That's all we care about, And so when you approach it that way, and your focus is not on you, but on what can be accomplished, then ego doesn't become necessarily that much of a problem.
Right. That's good stuff.
So Ken, if we can drill down, and that was, that was so good. And we appreciate your insight there. So a lot of us are dealing with tons of change, right? I mean, whether it's like, organizations that are having to downsize, whether it's just trying to keep up with the different regulations that are happening, whether it's CDC, WHO, government, OSHA, whatever it is. There's just a lot of change in the air, and leaders have had to, make decisions and make, for their organizations, healthy decisions as it relates to their next steps, where when it comes to the company's priorities, or more importantly, even their people's priorities. So, what are the things that you're doing to make those right decisions in the face of these all of these changes?
Well, one of a company I used to work for, and the president of that company would say that change is inevitable, growth is optional. And within that, I would say that one of the most important things, especially in the environment as we're coming out of, hopefully we're coming out of COVID and not going back in again,
Right.
I mean, from my lips to God's ears, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the key word there, Steve, is flexibility. I don't know if you've heard the proverb or not, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not get bent out of shape, right? And so I always believe that, I try to take a longer view of things. For example, I think that if you really know what it is your company needs to accomplish, what your goal is, I would write that with pen and ink. But the steps to get there, I would have a pencil with a really big eraser, because how you get there is going to change depending upon the environment you find yourself in. So prior to the pandemic, we went out and saw all of our clients in person, sat down at their desk, looked at them eye to eye. Well, during the COVID, during the pandemic, we had to say, how do we stay in business since we're not face to face anymore? And of course, we made use of Zoom and Whereby, great online tool, and now I would say, even coming out of the pandemic, we're finding that to be even more effective. And like right now, I'm seeing you on screen. It's very comfortable at this point, and I think that a lot of people have transitioned into that. Just one example of flexibility. In fact, it's changed our entire delivery process. COVID has. And the great thing is that we don't see it as a negative. We see it as a real positive. It's made us leaner, more efficient.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what I would just say is look for solutions and remain flexible as you do it.
That's good. That's one of the things that you had mentioned to me, is that flexibility is business environment about a decade ago impacted your business. You guys were a different business. You guys were at the top of the mountain.
We were
doing extremely well.
Yeah.
Business environment changes, and it's a complete impact on everything you do.
So my business partner, Ron Budd, and I, in 25 years, have owned about 4 or 5 different companies.
Okay.
And one of those companies was a company called Health Plans, 4 less, the number 4. And we had reinvented how small companies can do health insurance, and figured out a way to take their premium, cut that cost in half, double the benefits. As a result, we became Anthem Blue Cross's 11th largest firm for the entire Western United States, had 400 agents working with us.
Wow.
And I think that had the Affordable Care Act not occurred, we might be one of the largest providers of health coverage in the United States today. But that killed that entire market. And at 60 years old, we had to begin, what do we do? What am I going to do when I grow up? Right.
Yeah.
And we had to completely reinvent ourselves.
Okay.
And so again, that comes back to that idea of flexibility, but also, again, don't paint yourself into such a corner business-wise that you cannot pivot.
Okay.
And so you need to build into your business planning and into your decision making. If X happens, what's going to be, is it going to be Y, or is it going to be Z?
Sure.
So you need to have a little flexibility and being able to pivot, and always be looking at that, because if you look at Kodak as an example, I don't know if you guys know this, but an employee of Kodak walked in one day with a digital camera and said, "I've got this great thing," and they said, "People use film." They own that technology. But Kodak is really not in business today because they were so stuck in their paradigm They just died as a company because they were not willing to look ahead a little bit, be flexible, and say, is this an opportunity here? And if this is where it's going, can we start pivoting that direction? They could have ruled the world, but because of their inflexible thinking, and they're willing to change their paradigm, they're not around really today to speak of.
Right.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's so true. One of the things I've also gotten from your insight there too, Ken, is not only in addition to the importance of being flexible, but also the use of critical thinking and analyzing different avenues that helps us to be adaptable, helps us to be flexible. I know recently Dale Carnegie, they did a survey across 20 countries and territories, and 57% of respondents have identified critical thinking as an essential, not just an important skill, but as an essential skill to have to be successful. So that flexibility coupled with that critical thinking provides that foundation and basis for making those more effective decisions. By the way, we're talking with Ken DuBose here as part of the 401 on Leadership podcast. If you have a question, please go ahead and put it in the comments section. Please like and also subscribe if you haven't already at a later point. We'd love to hear from you. Ken would also love to hear from you as well, and to address any questions that you have. So, Ken, if we can drill down a little bit as it relates to this idea of not just leadership, but inclusive leadership. And so broad definition of that, because it means so much more than this definition, but we wanted to keep it broad, which is essentially providing an environment where everyone's not only heard, but they're also valued, and they can bring their best selves at work. And so as it relates to you and your business and your team, the people that are working with you, how would you define inclusive leadership, and how have you demonstrated that with your team?
That's a really good question, Steve. We have a philosophy at our company that my business partner and I instituted, and we have a hierarchy of thought on everything that we do. Number one, is it good for our client base?
Okay.
If we're going to do something different, or we're going to improve what we're doing, whatever the case is, number one, is it in the best interest of the client? If it doesn't pass that one, it's done. We don't go forward. Secondly, is it good for our employees and our sales force? Our sales force, we have sales reps all the way from Honolulu to Puerto Rico, and so, we feel a great responsibility to them. There's a lot of families that need to be taken care of and fed, and if we make a really boneheaded or a dumb decision, and it costs people their livelihoods, that's a big responsibility. So number one, is it good for the client? Number two, is it good for our employees? Is it good for our staff? And then thirdly, is it good for our company? And lastly, is it good for me and Ron?
Okay.
And if those first three don't happen, then it's not good for us. And so we try to create an environment that includes everybody. It's really important that everybody feels they've got the opportunity to grow within your organization. We always tell people, look, we have a system. We want you guys to follow our system, but our system's not so inflexible that if you have a really great idea, we won't listen to it. Bring it to us. Don't put it out there without talking to us. Because everything we've done is vetted through, our legal staff and through the tax team that we work with. But if you have a great idea that will really help us, as President John Kennedy said, a rising tide will lift all boats, right? So bring it to us and we'll look at that. And then also we always provide upward mobility for our guys so that they can always do better. If they work harder and they do better, then they can benefit. We want everybody to have a place at the table so that so that they can have an opportunity to make more money, so they can have an opportunity to feel appreciated. They can be part of the decision-making process. And that's only possible because of that hierarchy of thought of, is it good for the client? Is it good for our staff and our sales force? Is it good for the company? And then lastly, is it good for us?
Mm-hmm. I think you hit it on the nail too there also, Ken, when you mentioned including your people in the decision-making process.
Yeah.
I think, for us as leaders, sometimes we think and we fret sometimes because we think that all the ideas and the thing has to come from us, and we neglect our people sometimes and their ideas that would make the organization even better. But instead of that, we do have the opportunity, and it definitely helps organizations if we include our people. Again, that's not to say we have to do everything that they say,
No,
but at
that's
the same time, including them in that decision-making thing, and building on the ideas that they provide, or even utilizing that idea, definitely that makes us stronger organizations, and not so much stronger organizations, but also helps us provide that environment for our team to succeed. And at the end, we succeed as well.
Well, if you want to know if you're a leader or not, look behind you and see who's following. And what causes people to follow. Well, I think it's that being humble and being willing to admit when you're wrong. I think it's being inclusive, allowing a seat at the table for everybody. And the reason I say this is because at some point, you have to make a decision, and sometimes that decision may not be popular, but I know we've all heard this idea of emotional bank accounts. Can I do a drawdown if I need to? Does it allow me the opportunity to make a mistake and say I'm sorry, and people still follow, right? And so, people will follow you if you have learned to be involved in their lives, and they are part of the decision-making process, and they're part of it. At some point, when a mistake is made, or you've made a decision that may not be popular, they will stay with you if they know who you are and what your heart is, and know that you're approachable.
And just to clarify, just in case there's somebody who's listening who's not familiar with an emotional bank account, the idea is, have you invested into somebody enough into that relationship,
right,
where if you need to ask something specific, that withdrawal, if you need to, that you've invested enough where they go, I can trust you. I know Ken has invested in my life. He cares about me, knows about me, and I'm willing to give this and follow him. So,
well, of course, you and I have known each other a while and friends. And, the other day on the phone, you and I were talking about a great book that I love, which is called Lincoln on Leadership. And guys, if you have not read that, that's one of my top 5 books, Lincoln on Leadership. And, in it tells a story that early in the Civil War, there was not a soldier who from the Union that went to battle that did not first come through, and Lincoln shook every one of their hands and talked with them. And then one day he's out visiting in a fort, and the Confederates found out that he was there. And they thought, boy, if we can come in, either capture or kill this guy, we can decapitate the Union, and this can be over with. And so because Lincoln had spent so much time with people, he was up on the ramparts watching the battle, and early in the battle, the commander of that fort was killed. And everything, without a clear voice of leadership, began to disintegrate and fall apart. And he, of course, without great military experience, a little bit, but not a lot, yelled out, "You put the cannon over there, you move over there." And as a result, the fort was saved, the battle was won. Why was it that they so responded to his voice? Because he had been so involved in their lives, and that they knew him, they knew his heart, they trusted him, and were able to respond because, there's a, great thing in Scripture, and not to make this a church thing today, but, Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd, right?
Yeah.
The sheep know me and they listen to my voice, and that's because they know him, right? And so that's really important in your organization, that you're out among the troops, that you're listening, that you're serving, that you're helping. And when the battle comes, people will respond to that kind of leadership. Yeah,
absolutely. Ken, we appreciate your time and sharing with us about decision making, and what does that look like as a leader, and how does that involve being inclusive with your team? And there was a lot of great takeaways. And I mean, obviously, being out and amongst your workforce is such a big thing.
Right.
What's something that a leader can do today? You're listening right now, or they're listening on this at a later point. What's a step that they can take to advance their decision making, their inclusive leadership in the workplace?
Well, lots of things you could look at, but I'll just end with this, that I think you need to keep the main thing the main thing.
Okay.
At the end of the day, everything we've talked about is inclusive, but if you're not going a direction, then there's no company. There's really not. I think that sometimes we're like raccoons, that we'll go along and say, boy, I'm committed, I'm focused. Ooh, shiny. And I'll go a different direction, right? Keep the main thing, and just know what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And then the decision-making process, your inclusivity, all of that filters around the direction that you're going. So know what you want. I heard a guy once say that if your goal in life is to walk to the beach to see the sunset, but you're walking east the whole time, you're not going to get there. I don't care how fast you do it, better attitude, the little train that thinks I think I can, it's not going to work, right? You've got to be going in the right direction and keep focused on that.
I heard a quote I was reading in a book just a couple weeks ago, and it was like, if you're on the wrong train, it doesn't matter if you're walking opposite down the hallway.
Yeah.
You're going the wrong direction on the wrong train.
Well, as Will Rogers said, you can be on the right track, but if you just stand still, you get run over. So there's proof to it.
Okay, and how can our listeners find you online?
So you can go to www.businessgroupresources with an S at the end, businessgroupresources.com. And you can reach me personally at Ken DuBose, D like David, U, B like boy, O, S like Sierra, E like Echo, Ken DuBose at businessgroupresources.com. And happy to take time and visit with you, answer any questions that we can about the research and development tax credit and how that can really help your business, especially as you're coming out of COVID and need extra funds. Really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much. And we'll have in the show notes a link to Business Group Resources and Ken, so you can see that also. And Steve, if somebody's looking for some additional ways to build their leadership, what are some of those steps that they can do, or what do you have available for them?
Yeah, sure. So go ahead and visit us online, ocdalecarnegie.com, where there are a number of resources, white papers that are free, that are available. We also facilitate webinars and programs out of our local office, specifically to equip your leaders to be better decision makers by providing processes to help you lead your people well. So feel free to reach out to myself. Again, reach out to our website, which is dalecarnegie.com or ocdalecarnegie.com. And John, we'll pass it to you to finish us off for today. Ken, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast.
Thank you, Steve. My privilege.
Yeah, well, we were privileged today to have Ken DuBose with us as we were talking inclusive leadership. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again next Monday talking leadership principles to help you become the leader people want to follow.